Halloween is a great time to play scary games, if you like scary games. And I guess if you observe what is basically the least official holiday of all time. I mean, even the federal government gets Columbus Day off. Build a fire, get a bowl of candy all to yourself, and pop in a Resident Evil game. Doesn't matter which one. Except that one. Or that one. There we go. Of course, if you'd rather play something that isn't good, there's always Cold Fear, a 2005 zombie game for the PC and Xbox. Or we could go back to Code Veronica. Cold Fear was published by Ubisoft, a company which I get more and more tired of every year, but in 2005 they were okay, I guess. It was developed by Darkworks, who nobody has ever heard of. Darkworks were those guys that made 1906 and Antarctic Odyssey, except it was cancelled, and the follow-up game USS Antarctica, which also got cancelled. More recently though, they've been working on a project called Black Death, which was cancelled. Probably the worst thing to happen to Cold Fear was the release a few months prior of Resident Evil 4, one of the best games of all time, and a total reinvention of the Resident Evil franchise. By which I mean, it was the first one that was actually playable. And Cold Fear, with spazzy controls and largely featureless gameplay, kinda wasn't. It was like a throwback to the days when Resident Evil was a huge pain in the ass, but the Japanese Bizarro style and mirror polish was replaced with whatever it is the French are known for. The game starts with a squad of the Hellghast from Killzone assaulting a cargo ship and getting totally wiped out by very hard-to-see monsters. So it's basically Fear on a boat. The next best thing to an entire squad of highly trained, heavily armed, super tactical troopers is a guy. No, I take that back. Not a guy. Some guy. From the Coast Guard. Bargain Bin Leon Kennedy explores the boat, fighting the awful camera and beer goggle controls until zombies show up, and then he gets to fight those too. Oh, now I get it. It's Resident Evil on a boat. Cold Fear's entire shtick is that it takes place on a boat. While you're out on deck, the swaying of the ship makes aiming difficult, and sometimes showers you with water. The controls are just garbage, and the effect on gameplay is savage. Cold Fear uses the fixed camera angles trick from Resident Evil, but not the tank controls. That means pushing right makes you move right, sometimes, except when it makes you move left. You might as well flip a coin to figure out what direction a button press will take you based on your character's position at the camera angle. It's possible to play the whole game from this mode, since you can still move, and you probably should. Switching back and forth between a fixed camera and an over-the-shoulder one is just god-awful, and playing Cold Fear is a dizzying experience. In every other way, Cold Fear also fails to be Resident Evil. There's no map, so the constant switching of the camera angle and your perspective makes it impossible to navigate below decks. Unlike in Resident Evil, there is no reward for exploration. Your only reward is boring regular ammo to replace the ammo you used while exploring. And it's not really scary. A few jump scares will have you go, whoa, for about an eighth of a second, but they're so ridiculously improbable that you just start laughing. By the second time a corpse falls up out of a pool of water, or hurls itself from a locker, you'll have already checked out and have your favorite podcast playing in the background.
What up, AOs? Welcome to a Kanzenshu,
the podcast,
an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fansite.
Kanzenshu.
So Cold Fear loses a mark for having jump scares, and then loses another one because the jump scares are so dumb. The atmosphere takes another hit thanks to the cornucopia of explosive objects. The explosive barrels are such a goofy early 2000s action game gimmick, way out of place in what's supposed to be survival horror. Unlike in Resident Evil, where you save at a typewriter, Cold Fear has a save window just pop up at certain checkpoints, which breaks flow. They ruin the otherwise nice atmosphere of the dark, the rain, and the cramped boat setting. Cold Fear leaves me with some questions. Why is the action button the same as the melee button? Did you think it was acceptable that trying to melee enemies sometimes results in bending down to collect 2 handgun bullets? And why are the sailors hostile? They're clearly fighting the zombies. Do they not want to get rescued? And how did the pre-rendered cutscenes turn out so bad, with Ubisoft money behind them no less?
I'm sorry, Anna. So this is it, Tom. 2 patients, 1 cure.
The action isn't varied or high-octane enough to be exciting, and it isn't atmospheric enough to be scary. Cold Fear was an attempt to outdo Resident Evil in the survival horror genre, but it just didn't make waves. Instead of survival horror, Cold Fear is action horror, and barely even that. It feels like every early 2000s action shooter, but with a stupid fixed camera system that turns it into the unholy offspring of Resident Evil and The Thing. Cold Fear received mediocre scores, didn't sell particularly well, and was never heard from again, which I think proves there is a god. It is interesting as one game in a long line of Resident Evil knockoffs, but it just isn't that fun or memorable. Pick it up on the cheap if you want to see for yourself, otherwise, stick to the genuine article. See you next time.